right, now we're live. Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. And yes, it is the background is a little bit different, obviously, because I'm still out of town and ready to rock and roll tonight. And yeah, we'll have, just I tell you what, when I'm not doing the shows or when I'm not doing Bible study, when I'm not doing night prayer, it drives me crazy. It drives me nuts, primarily because this is what I love to do. And so, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know. It's been rough, certainly for me, because I like being with you guys, the community, and that has become it made me realize how incredibly important it is for structure. You know, when you get into a pattern, you get into a routine, you don't like messing with that. But we're here, and I'm determined to do this show. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. All right. So folks, let me just, I don't know why that kind of, I don't know why that came through, but all right. So we're live. Happy Friday to you. Hopefully you're having a great Friday wherever you are. It's still weird. It's still very strange because it's only 4 p.m. where I am right now. 4 p.m. So it's just so weird to try to get in sync, if you will, with the time. It is just crazy. For those of you just joining, I have put sub chat on because we don't like trolls and you go away. But nonetheless, we're going to have a fun-filled, exciting Friday. I'm going to talk about the topic in just a second. So I'm also going to talk about this today. So I went to a couple of museums here in Los Angeles. And one is the Museum of Torture. That sounds like a fun idea. Hey, let's go there. But we'll talk about that in a second. First, thank you very much. Let's talk about the business. Guys, I want you to do me a favor, if you would. I want you to go to the sponsor's website. And that's KGRAD as in dog, B as in bicycle.com. KGRADB.com. Click on the shop link and then click my name. And when you do that, it will take you to the shop page. There's a lot of really great items there. St. Benedict, St. Michael, some other just really amazing products. 100% of the profit that would go to me as a community, we have decided that we're going to donate that to, in fact, our presentation, our friends, the MKS. So yeah, go ahead and run that clip, Mr. Producer.
Fans of Bishop James Long, the renowned exorcist and paranormal expert on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Now you can carry his wisdom with you. Our Bishop James Long collection features blessed apparel such as St. Benedict hats and tees, as well as home items to protect and inspire. Elevate your spiritual journey. Go to kgradb.com/shop and discover the Bishop James Long merch today.
There we go. So there's a cool little video that we run. It's a sponsor program. But anyway, go to kgradb.com. Click on my name, Bishop. Click on the shop link and then my name. Please buy all the products, every single thing you got. Just buy them all. I mean, December's right around the corner. It's right around the corner. So if you do that, remember 100% of the profits that would go to me, we're going to donate that to the MKS Kids Foundation. It's an orphanage in Uganda. And I think that's beautiful. They desperately need funding. I think everybody needs funding these days. And I get it. Because many people are 1 to 2 paychecks going homeless themselves. And so if you can, please do that. Now, if you want to go to my website because you're bored and have nothing else better to do, you can certainly do so. BishopJamesLong.com. If you want to go to the church's website, usocc.org. Now, I did not plan to have night prayer tonight, obviously, because of, it's just been kind of cray-cray. But I guess we could have night prayer. It's not something that I'm completely and totally against, because by the time I'm here, so Judy Ann, I don't know if you're in the chat, but if you want to, I can upload. I'll have to upload the website, the script, so you guys can see it. But we'll see. So I don't know if Judy Ann is here in the chat. If she is, and if you would like to do night prayer with me, just let me know. And if not, then we can just chill out for the day. But nonetheless, we are going to be rocking and rolling. So everything has been going wonderfully until a couple of days ago, when some moron decided to side swipe my vehicle. It was parked in the parking lot. And of course, they did not put any type of note on the car. I just live in the wrong decade. I just live in the wrong decade. Because if I had done that, I would have put a note on the car and said, my apologies, this is my information. That's what I would have done. I would not be able to put my head on the pillow at night knowing that I did that and didn't admit to the fault. But it probably was a person who, one, their license was probably revoked, or two, they didn't have insurance. It's probably what it was. So anyway, I'm dealing with that nonsense and that stress, and that's incredible stress. Because number one, I'm not going to talk bad about the company yet, but if they don't do the right thing, you're going to hear exactly from the company that I rent it from, and I'm going to blast it on every social media platform and tell you not to rent from. We'll see how they handle it. We'll see how they handle it. But right now, so far, I'm not impressed. And we got the extra insurance, to make sure that everything is covered. But it's just shady. So anyway, it's in the back. It's in the back bumper where clearly someone was parking and they hit it. And so, they put a dent in it, and it's gonna cost some money to repair that. So I don't know. It's like, great. Is it anything else? Anything? And now, when that happens, it kind of makes you don't even want to leave the hotel room. Because it's like, okay, well, if I go to another location, some idiot hits the car, great. Let's go add some more dings to the car. So really, that's what it makes you feel like. Oh, I did. I've asked for the police report. I filed it yesterday. And now the manager here of the hotel is looking at the video to see if we can find out who did this. And their asses need to go to jail. They need to go to jail. I don't care. They need to go to jail. When you do something like that and you don't put a note on there, that's a hit and run. That is a felony. You go to jail. But again, I guarantee it's somebody who just didn't have insurance. And so, but there's nothing you can do. You can't change it. You can't fix it. And you can't be with the car 24/7. So when you park your car, you just assume people are not going to be idiots. But what can you do? So anyway, that's really been heavy on my mind. It really bothers me. Because number one, I have OCD. So that's even more compulsive, where you can't stop thinking about it. And I woulda, shoulda, coulda thing. That will eat at your brain. When you have OCD, that's really what it will. It will eat at your brain to the point where it becomes so oppressive and anxiety ridden. But that's just me. I have OCD. I will be the first to admit it. But yeah, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? So anyway, you can't be at the car. Thank you. You can't be at the car 24/7, and that's just the way it goes. So that's how my trip has been, and it just ruined it. Just ruined it. So anyway, and I talked to Judy Ann about this, and Judy Ann was, she has a way of kind of teasing you to kind of get out of this, but that's me. I'm, OCD. And now every time I go get to that car, I just look at that dent and you should have done this. You should have done that. Why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? See, but that's my brain. That's how it works. So anyway, the moral of the story is that if you are a moral human being, an ethical human being, and you accidentally bump a car, you should put your information on the windshield. But I guess that person really didn't give a damn. And that's typical. That is typical. Because I actually talked to the police officer last night about it. And I said, I just don't understand. Why didn't they put something on the windshield? And he looked at me and he said, you do know we're in California, right? I said, I don't care where we are. I don't care if we're in Timbuktu. That's what you're supposed to do. And he said, no, apparently that happens a lot, a lot. So anyway, make sure if you rent a car, make sure you get the extra insurance, which we did. But we'll find out what this company does. We'll find out. And I will let you know if the company does the right thing. And if the company does not, I will put them on blast. And they will because I have OCD and I will not be polite at all. So you're right, Pinky, they do. But okay, let's get into our presentation. So we're going to have a good time. Now, tomorrow is Saturday. I will not, I won't probably be going live on TikTok tomorrow, maybe. And that is because I am currently working a case that has clearly escalated. So when a team found out, they're local in California. When they found out that I was coming to LA, they reached out to me and said they had been working a demonic infestation case that was really violent, and they knew that they were in over their heads. And they had asked if I would be willing to help them, because no clergy was willing to help this family, because this family is not a member of any church community. And so, of course, the pastor says, well, you haven't put any money in the collection plate, that kind of crap. And so they couldn't get any clergy to help. But this really now has escalated to where it is a very violent situation. So I'm going to be going there tomorrow. It is in LA, and we will be taking care of that situation. So it's a case that requires immediate attention, immediate. And that's what I'll be doing. So I don't know what I'll be doing tomorrow, other than going to this place. I'm going to go there around 10 a.m. Because I don't know how long it could take all day long. So the last that I heard was that the team actually was there, and they recorded the crucifix that they had on the wall. This family is very, very religious, and the crucifix, just like someone had put their hand underneath the crucifix and flung it right off the wall. Or even a string. It looked like it had been yanked. And I asked the team, said, when you saw this, did you see any? Were you the only ones there? They were the only ones there. There were no homeowners there. There was no invisible string. And so that really frightened the team. And the crucifix that was on the wall, apparently it had left like a burnt mark, like something had put a flame torch, if you will, on the back of the cross and put it up against the wall. So now on this wall where the crucifix was, it is a burnt mark that's destroyed basically that particular the wall. So that obviously there's some issues, and I'm going to have to address that as well as what happened, how it happened. I have an idea of how it started, and I'll share that later, but not right now. I'm not going to share possibilities, or maybe when I get there and I speak to the family and I speak to the team and get more information. I've gotten quite a bit already, but nonetheless, that's what we're going to do. Okay. Oh, goodness, Hetty, certainly will. So, yeah, I think, why don't we, well, it's, I'm not going to go talk necessarily about what kind of demon and the name and things of this nature. They have some EVPs that are very, very aggressive. One EVP clearly says, I am Legion. I mean, it's Class A, and you can hear, I am Legion. It's very clear, crystal clear. And so the team they're a little shaken up, and they're also angry because the team went to their pastors and asked their pastors to help. And the pastor said, well, who are these people? Or, are they members of the church? No. Well, no, we're not going to help them. And that's one of the reasons why I got involved in the paranormal. So anyway, why don't we do this? So tonight, we wrap things up at the 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and which would be 6 p.m. Pacific time, my time right now. And then what we'll do is I'll take a quick break. I'll update the website to show the Friday night prayer. And then why don't we just do night prayer tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard. at 7 p.m. Pacific. Okay? Because I think it's good for all of us because I miss night prayer just as much as you guys. So we'll do night prayer tonight, and just give me time to upload this. So as soon as this presentation is over, give me some time to upload and get the site. And then Judy Ann said that she's willing to jump in with us, so we appreciate that. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about a very, very cool topic. It's a topic that I've been wanting to discuss for a while. I am having difficulties finding a person that I think is a legitimate vampire. I met somebody here in LA. I went to a particular museum, and tell me if this is too loud. So I went to a particular museum and I told them that I was looking for somebody that claims to be a vampire. And so this individual said, well, I want you to go to this museum and just ask for this person. So I did that. And I met this individual. There's something unique about this person, but do I think they're a vampire? I think they believe they are. And so I told this individual that I was going to do a presentation this Friday on vampirism, and if they would be willing to chat. And they said, no, not on camera. And I understood, that's fine. But I did ask, for some information, and it was very, very kind. And so let's go. So again, if you guys can please make sure you like, share, and let me know if the music is too loud. Tonight's topic, a very, very interesting one. Okay, I'm throwing this mouse away. I'm sorry, I cannot. Okay. Not trying to be negative, but it's like one more complication. All right. Hello. Let's go into it. I want to talk about two things. The Highgate Vampire Panic. The Shadow of London. This is a true story. Okay? And again, let me know, TikTok, if this is too loud. If the music is too loud, I need to know. I need some feedback so just tell me if it's too loud. So, my friends, tonight, we journey into London's shadowed past. Hello there, Willie. Hopefully you're doing well. I'm out of town, Willie, so I haven't been able to keep up with you. Hopefully you guys are doing good. So we journey to London's shadowed past, into a neighborhood haunted not only by graves, but by fears rooted deep in history and myth. So this is the story tonight of the Highgate. It's a place where Victorian Gothic grandeur and meet the dark whispers of legend. It's a place where the undead, real or imagined, may still linger in the shadows. So prepare yourself, friends, to walk among ancient stones, through fog-laden streets, and into the very depths of a legend that refuses to die even today. I have some friends in England, and I asked them, hey, did you hear about this? And they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. We know all about this. So hang tight with the questions. Let me do this lecture, okay? So let's talk about the birth of Highgate's Gothic necropolis between the 1830s and 1850s. So imagine London, 1830. Now, the city's population has surged from around 1 million in 1800 to approximately 1.9 million by the time of the first census of 1841. Now, the Industrial Revolution is in full swing at this time, really transforming society. Yep, people have audio. The Reform Act of 1832, it passed on June 7th, 1832. It began the process of expanding electoral rights and modernizing the political landscape, but also reflected the upheaval of a rapidly changing society. First, the cholera outbreaks of 1832, 1848, 1854, it devastated London, exposing the unsanitary conditions of overcrowded churches and city cemeteries. By 1832, the overcrowded churchyards like St. Martin's in the fields and St. Pancras had become a source of disease, prompting urgent reform. There were new burial laws at this time, so the Burial Act of 1832 passed on August the 5th, and it mandated the creation of new cemeteries outside densely populated districts to prevent the spread of the disease. So, in response, the Highgate Cemetery Act received royal assent on June the 7th, 1836, the same day as the passing of the Burial Act authorizing its construction. So the cemetery opened on May 21st, 1839, designed by architect James Bunsen Buning. It was inspired by the rural cemeteries of France and even in America, emphasizing landscape beauty, Gothic architecture. So the first burials took place in 1839, with notable Victorian elites interred there, including writers, politicians, industrialists. So again, this is important to explain the history of it because it gets very, very interesting. So in 1830s and 1840s marked a period of intense religious and spiritual questioning. The Oxford movement, and then that began in 1833. It sought to revive Catholic traditions in the Anglican Church, reflecting a broader, like a spiritual revival. At the same time, there was a huge rise of spiritualism. It's a belief that the spirits of the dead could communicate with the living. It began to gain popularity, and it was fueled by figures like Allan Kardec in France and Emma Harding Britten in Britain. So in the 1848 revolutions across Europe, the 1857 Indian Rebellion, and the Crimean War shook societal confidence, heightening fears of unseen enemies and the supernatural. So Victorian society at this time, it saw death as both a reality and damn thing and fascination. The era's mourning customs, emphasized by mourning dress, elaborate funerals, memorials, it reflected a culture obsessed with the afterlife. So the Gothic aesthetic, pointed arches, gargoyles, angel statues, that became symbol of the era's morbid fascination. And then the cemetery's architecture and atmosphere embodied this preoccupation, but also subtly fed darker fears about reanimation, spirits, and the undead. Reanimation is when the body, the person comes back to life after death. And that was the legitimate fear. So let's talk about the seeds of fear in the early 20th century, the first sightings. This happened in London in 1914. The world erupts into war. The Great War begins on July 28th, 1914, and ends on November the 11th, 1918. Over 900,000 British soldiers pass away, leaving a scar on the national psyche. And the post-war years, especially the 1920s, they're marked by social upheaval, economic turmoil, and a craving for spiritual solace. So in 1920, the Society of Physical Research published the groundbreaking proceedings of the SPR, which is the Society of Physical Research, documenting seances, ghost sightings, and claims of communication with spirits. And if founded in 1882, it was aimed to investigate paranormal phenomena scientifically. So in the 1920s and 30s, it saw a surge in spiritualist mediums, haunted house reports, and even occult groups fueled by the trauma of war and the Great Depression. Now, the 1930s was an interesting decade because that's the rise of fascism in Europe with a particular German leader, rising to power in 1933, and of course Mussolini ruling Italy in 1922. That created fears of dark forces. Evil influences began to spread. So in Britain, the British Union of Fascists, founded in 1932, and other far-right groups propagated fear and infiltration and evil. So the Battle of Britain, which occurred from July to October of 1940, and the Blitz devastated London, unaliving over 40,000 civilians. And the war's trauma deepened societal fears of death, invasion, and even unseen malevolence. And then in 1947, the Festival of Britain aimed to promote national pride. Yet beneath this veneer was a society haunted by fears of death and decay. So the Cold War, starting in 1947, and the threat of nuclear annihilation in the 1950s fueled anxieties even more about unseen enemies and even apocalyptic fears. What we see in the 1960s was a decade of social revolution. The 1967 Sexual Offences Act decriminalized homosexuality in England and Wales, and in 1969, the moon landing. This is important to understand the history because it sets it up so where you understand why there was such panic. The same year, the Stonewall riots occurred in 1969 in New York. It sparked a global movement of LGBTQ rights and reflected society's anxieties and hidden identities. So what happened? The first sightings. In 1969, Eleanor Grant told a journalist it was a foggy night, October 1969. The streets were cloaked in mist, and the city was alive with rumors of ghosts and spirits. She says, I was walking my little dog past the cemetery gates when I saw him. A tall, spectral figure, cloaked in dark robes, standing still among the tombs, staring at me with glowing red eyes. Now, her account, initially dismissed as a hallucination, that was the first of many. There was a young man named David, and he also told a reporter he was walking home late, feeling a little dizzy, when he saw a tall, gaunt figure, almost skeletal, standing among the graves, its eyes bright red, locked onto mine. He says, I ran, but I felt it chasing me through the fog. There was a woman named Miss Margaret, and she says, I heard whispering voices, chanting in Latin near the crypts. And when I looked, I saw a tall figure floating near a crypt, like it was waiting, watching. So in 1970, newspapers like the Daily Mail and the Evening Standard sensationalized the sightings, asking if London's vampire had awakened. So radio programs debated whether it was mass hysteria or something supernatural. This was a huge, huge topic during this time. So the Victorian Gothic imagery, the tall, dark, glowing, eyes, became symbols of anxieties about foreign influence and disease and the undead. So by 1970, the legend had solidified. The creature was called the Highgate Vampire, described as a tall, gaunt figure, over 6 feet tall, with elongated limbs, glowing red eyes, and an aura of malevolence. And the sightings increased, with reports of shadows darting between the tombs and witnesses claiming to see blood stains on gravestones. What's interesting is it wasn't just a certain group of people that were reporting this. A lot of people have been reporting this from all walks of life. Police officers, fire officers, doctors, nurses. Now, when you're talking about vampires, vampire myths date back centuries, most famously in Eastern Europe. where stories of reanimated corpses, known as uppers or others, circulated since at least the 18th century. Now, the 19th century Gothic revival, exemplified by Bram Stoker's Dracula, published in 1897, revived fears of the undead, with vampires symbolizing foreign invasion, disease, societal decay. So in Britain, Victorian society's obsession with death led to elaborate mourning rituals. Mourning dress, funeral art, public memorials, yet also fostered belief in spirits and the possibility of reanimation. So the Victorian era in 1837 and 1901 under Queen Victoria's reign was a time of religious revival. And the Oxford movement began in 1833, sought to revive Catholic traditions in the Anglican Church, emphasizing the supernatural and even the mystical. Spiritualism, popularized by mediums like Daniel Douglas Home, claimed to contact spirits through seances. And these practices gained mass popularity after the 1860s. Thousands attending seances and what's called spirit circles. Now, the vampire panic of the 19th century was fueled by fears of contagion, particularly tuberculosis, otherwise known as consumption, which caused pallid, emaciated appearances, similar to vampire descriptions. And the Victorian obsession with death, the supernatural, and the occult created fertile ground for vampire legends. Crypts, coffins, graveyard rituals became symbols of both mourning and dread. So the rumors of, back in 1970s, the rumors of dark cults performing secret rites, it grew louder. And in 1971, reports emerged of a hooded figure chanting Latin, drawing sigils on crypt walls, and performing blood rituals, often near the crypts of Highgate. For those of you who don't know, blood rituals are, unfortunately, usually it pertains to an animal, and there's bloodletting. And you do this to make a pact with the devil. Lisa saw this, and this is what she reported. I snuck into a crypt near midnight, hiding behind a bush. Inside, I saw a circle of robed figures chanting in Latin, their voices echoing through the damp stone. Blood was on the floor. Then a tall, cloaked figure with glowing eyes appeared, and then she ran. Now, the 1970s saw a surge in occult organizations. The Church of Satan, founded in 1966 by Anton LaVey, influenced underground groups worldwide. In Britain, clandestine covens, satanic groups, often sensationalized or demonized by the media, proliferated. I mean, it just grew. Some believe these groups sought to summon or awaken supernatural entities, including vampires. There was actual police investigations in 1971 and 1972, documented crypt vandalism, occult symbols and practices, and ritual gatherings. Vigilant groups armed with crosses, holy water, and stakes patrolled the cemetery, convinced that they were warding off evil. In October 17th, 1970, something insane happened. So the night of October 17th, 1970 became legendary, a night that marked the full emergence of this legend. So the moonless night cloaked the cemetery in blackness. Fog just surrounded the ancient graves. A group of 20 residents, armed with crosses and stakes, gathered at the cemetery entrance, trembling with fear. Now, of course, it's October, it's Halloween, it's Halloween season, if you will, and they were, I'm sure, very afraid, but they truly legitimately believed that there was satanic practices that were being performed there in the crypts, summoning these vampires. It was so bad that during this time, people would lock their doors, they would not go out at night, and they wouldn't never walk past the cemetery at night under any circumstances. John was one of the individuals that was there, at one of the people that was going to make sure that no one came into the cemetery that evening. Thank you. And he says suddenly, and he reported this to the news. He says, suddenly I saw him, a tall, gaunt figure with glowing red eyes. He moved with predatory grace, silent as the wave, he says. And when he saw us, he hissed. Now, Sarah, she was there. She says, claws scraped her arm. She described it as painful and icy. She screamed and ran, but she saw his face. And she claims she saw fangs and eyes blazing red. So the creature had attacked, leaving bloody scratches. Then disappeared. Was it a vampire? Was it a demon? A creature summoned by dark rituals? We'll never know. The night's horrors left an indelible mark on those who witnessed it. As a matter of fact, even today, there are people that will not go past that cemetery. So decades later, the legend persists. Highgate Cemetery has become a magnet for ghost hunters, paranormal enthusiasts, and of course, thrill seekers, which is very, very dangerous. Yeah, not this one. I've never talked about the Highgate one. A lot of people have captured photographs of orbs, but again, orbs can be easily explained. Most of the time, it's lens flare, like when you take a flash, and the video captures this, or bugs. Usually, it can be explained, but there are some instances where you scratch your head and say, "Well, that's interesting." People have described flickering shadows or shadow people, strange lights. Visitors often report a lingering, oppressive presence, especially after sunset. There was an interview that Dr. Emily Carter gave, and she said there's undeniable residual energy at Highgate Cemetery, whether from Victorian fears or something more malevolent. The stories keep coming. There was also night vision footage, shows shadow people moving independently. And they clearly saw this. And here's what's very interesting. They did see orbs, and they caught orbs on the night vision footage, but it had a very, very high heat signature, which they couldn't explain. One investigator screamed, look at this, the shadow moved right behind the tombstone. Many believe that the creature still lurks in the shadows, patiently watching and waiting. Now, there's a lot of theories. There's a lot of reflections that people have looked at this and said, yeah, but I don't know about this. I mean, was it the reality? What was it? I mean, is it an actual vampire, an ancient spirit, or a myth fueled by, collective fears? But when you think about understanding the historical era, remember the Victorian era, especially under Queen Victoria's reign, was obsessed with death, spiritualism, and the supernatural. And Victorian society actually embraced mediums like D.D. Hume. He was a notable trance medium, and the Theosophical Society, which explored esoteric and occult knowledge. Spiritualism exploded during this time, and they absolutely believed that vampires walk in cemeteries or the streets. And then in the 20th century, the rise of mass media, sensationalism, tabloids, and the occult revival, sparked by figures like Aleister Crowley, kept the myth alive. In 1967, the Satanic Panic began to brew, culminating in the 1980s with widespread fears of satanic ritual abuse. In the 1970s, counterculture embraced mysticism, astrology, occult practices, blending fears and fantasies of the supernatural. Now, there are theories as to what this thing was. what is interesting is I've had the opportunity to speak to quite a few people, being in the field for as long as I have. And there have been people who have described seeing this tall, gaunt figure, and what sometimes is glowing red eyes, sometimes is glowing green eyes, but they see this, they can clearly see it. I'm curious, before I continue, I would like to know, has anyone ever experienced this? I would really like to know that. Have you ever experienced, have you gone to like a paranormal or any place, cemetery or wherever it might be? Not red eyes, okay? But you saw this tall, gaunt figure that they're talking about? So let me know, because I really want to know. So if you are here and if you've ever experienced this, please let me know. Yeah, I'm just kind of, I saw red eyes, but it was in a house. Okay. You know, it's interesting because when I saw that creature at the Gates of Hell Cemetery, which I still don't know what that is, um, it still drives me crazy because I can't explain it. But I know very well that I saw it. But this was a bat. This was not a tall man, if you will. It was more, without question, it was a beast. All right. So there's a lot of people who have not experienced it. A lot of people have, when they go paranormal investigating, they tell me that they experienced this. Now, many people believe the stories were exaggerated, fueled by media sensationalism, social hysteria. Others insist that the creature is real, a vampire or a demon, perhaps awakened or summoned. Some think occult groups succeeded in opening a portal, unleashing malevolent forces that are still beneath the cemetery today. Now, whether a myth or not, some darkness refuses to die. I also want to talk about the Kentucky vampire cult. This is insane. If you've not heard of this, listen to this. So, in the Whispering Hills of Kentucky, a land of moonlit, forests and old legends, we're going to talk about this small town, one of secret cults, blood rituals, and teenager boy who dared to face the darkness. So if you've never heard of this, sit back. Kentucky is a beautiful place, but for generations, stories whispered through the hollows, tales of witches, revenants, blood-drinking monsters. And the history of vampire legends back in Kentucky, it actually stretched back all the way to early 1800s in the Appalachian and the bluegrass region. Rural communities believed in blood-drinking spirits, corpses that refused to rest and rising from graves to feed on the living. In 1820, reports from Morgan County tell of villagers burying loved ones with heavy stones, believing that some reanimated corpses would rise to hunt the living. And the legend grew in the 1830s as the nation expanded westward. Tales from Harlem and Harlan County, nearby areas, describe blood-drained animals, villagers digging up graves, to even find mutilated bodies. In 1840, the first documented case involving a suspected vampire in Kentucky was reported in a small town near Harlan. The community believed a creature had risen from the grave, draining livestock. And so Kentucky's isolation and rural superstition fostered these stories. For centuries, folk medicine, witchcraft, blood magic were part of the local culture. And then, of course, you have the Civil War. Left scars, trauma, loss, and the fear of supernatural fueled many legends. So through the 19th and 20th century, tales persisted. Reanimated corpses, shadowy figures, blood sacrifices. But it was in the late 20th century, particularly the 1990s, that saw these old stories turn into something terrifyingly real. See, by the late 1990s, whispers of a secret cult operating deep in Kentucky hills surfaced. They called themselves the Blood Moon Cult. And local residents spoke of strange gatherings, cloaked figures in old robes, performing midnight rituals during blood moons, when the moon turns deep crimson in the night sky. Now, their beliefs, blood magic, using human blood to summon dark spirits and worship of a creature they called the Blood Lord. They believed to be an ancient vampire spirit trapped beneath the earth. Yep, the Red Eyes cult. So the first reports of these rituals date back to August of 1998, when hunters in Harlan County stumbled onto a hidden cave filled with blood-stained symbols and bones. There was a deputy that reported we found an altar smeared with blood, bones scattered around, and we thought it was some kind of satanic cult. But what we saw in there was beyond our understanding. So over the next year, stories of missing animals, horses, cattle, even dogs, spread throughout the rural mountains. Some believed the cult was sacrificing animals to flee the bloodthirsty vampire spirit. And among the many curious teens, one boy named Ethan Carter, age 17, became obsessed with the stories. He loved horror movies, folklore, and he believed the legends might be real. So August 28, 2000, a rare blood moon in Kentucky sky, Ethan, driven by curiosity and obsession, decided to explore the abandoned mines near Pineville. Ethan said, everyone said the caves were cursed, but I had to see for myself. I snuck out at midnight, flashlight in hand, made my way into the dark. The deeper I went, the colder it got. I saw strange symbols painted on the walls. Some looked like blood, others like ancient glyphs. And then I saw it. An altar covered with blood, bones, and candles. Hooded figures were gathered around, chanting in Latin. They looked up as I hid behind a rock, frozen in fear. He said, I took photos, but I was terrified they would see him. And then one of the figures turned and I saw his face, pale, almost skull-like, with eyes that looked like they had burnt from within. He ran, stumbling out of the cave, but he knew he had uncovered something horrifying. Ethan showed his photograph to the sheriff, but they dismissed him as a prankster until strange things started happening. People in Pineville reported seeing hooded figures in the woods, strange symbols appearing on trees, animals found mutilated. Then, of course, on October 31st, 2000, Halloween night, the local sheriff's department decided to investigate Ethan's claims after mounting evidence. Rumors began to just go crazy. Surveillance teams set up around the caves at dusk, and at midnight approached cloaked figures began gathering, chanting. So officers moved in, surrounded the cult members, their cloaks billowing, candles flickering. And Ethan was caught trying to intervene, shouting, you summoned this, you did this. And it was actually in a courtroom. The prosecutor stated these individuals believed they were summoning a vampire, an evil spirit that preys on blood. Their actions were dangerous, reckless, could have at least unleashed horrors we cannot comprehend. What was really sad about this is these individuals especially one of the individual, was sentenced to prison because they did some terrible things. Has anyone heard of this story? If you have not, let me know. Now, the vampire clan, now these people were from Murray. And in 1998, they unalived a couple in Florida after the 16-year-old leader, Robert Farrell, bludgeoned the victims to death. The unaliving happened during a road trip to help the victim's daughter, Heather Windorf, to run away from home. Many people say that this Rod Farrell is the individual. The group's leader pleaded guilty to the unalivings, was initially sent to death, making him the youngest person in Florida at that time on death row. His sentence was later reduced to life in prison. There was another individual, Howard Scott Anderson, Dana Cooper, Charity Keese, Heather Windorf. So basically, the group was a loose-knit group of teenagers in Murray, Kentucky. They were fascinated with vampires and Gothic subculture. Some members engaged in rituals, and the group was also known to meet at a local abandoned building known as Hotel California. they would engage in role-playing games like Vampire, the Masquerade. But they did, I mean, really, the criminal activities began before the unaliving, including a break-in in an animal shelter in 1996, where 2 puppies were unalived. They were absolutely convinced that one of them was a vampire, the leader. But I want to go deeper. For centuries, these beings, they've prowled the edges of imagination, shaping cultures, instilling fear in the hearts of humankind. So I want to go a little bit deeper into explaining vampirism. Because in ancient civilization, we see, even in Mesopotamia, we see the earliest known vampire legends, where tales of the Ikemu and the Lilu, ghastly spirits that feasted on the living, surfaced. How terrifying it must have been for the ancients to live under constant threats of these monsters, whose insatiable hunger for blood was said to bring pestilence and even madness. Fast forward to ancient Greece, and again, and Rome, where stories of the Impusa and the Lamia, seductive female demons, emerged, luring unsuspecting victims to their doom. It's a tale woven with shadows and truths long forgotten, where the veil between the living and the undead was first torn. But picture this, if you will. A time when humanity was young, the earth covered with pristine forests, untamed wilderness. Ancient civilizations flourished, their knowledge guarded by whispering winds and towering mountains. But yet within civilization, a certain darkness festered, a darkness that even the brightest torches feared to illuminate. Legend tells of an ancient tribe that actually dwelled in the Carpathian Mountains, their existence shrouded in complete mystery. That was a time before written word, before history could capture the essence of their malevolence. These people were said to have discovered an ancient and forbidden knowledge, a ritual that could grant immortality. But, as is the way with forbidden secrets, this gift came at a dire price. So the ritual was tied to a veil, an ethereal barrier, if you will, that separated the living from the realm of the dead, undead. And by tearing this veil, they could draw forth a life force from the other side, bestowing them, eternal life. And ripping the veil was not without consequence. It was an unspeakable horror was unleashed, birthing the first vampires. So as the veil was torn and unnatural chills seeped into the world, those who partook in this ritual transformed. Allegedly, I got to do this puzzle. Guys, we've already been here for an hour. Allegedly, right? And this is how really it all started. That's correct. So the sun became their enemy, the taste of blood, their eternal craving. Scholars have speculated about the nature of its transformation. Some suggest it was a punishment from the gods, a curse bestowed on their hubris. Others believe it was a predatory evolution. But imagine the terror of that first night when these beings, neither dead nor alive, roamed their villages. Neighbors and kin, once friendly faces, lurked in the shadows, their eyes aglow with predatory hunger. The ancient tribe soon realized the enormity of their mistake. It was too late. The curse spread like wildfire, the thirst for blood insatiable. So now, world of these monstrous beings traveled far and wide. As humans are and won't do, they fled their homes in terror, inadvertently spreading the curse to distant lands. So the vampire mythos began to intertwine with numerous cultures and adapting their tale of unique contexts, yet always preserving the core of the terror. In ancient Mesopotamia, thank you, scholars unearth clear tablets warning of the Ikemu. Those are restless spirits, thirsty for the living. And across the seas in ancient China, tales spoke of the jiangshi, reanimated corpses that drained the life force of their victims. Here's what's interesting. Each culture, separated by time and space, bore witness to the ripple effect of this ancient veil. That's what's so interesting about this. Now, remember, every shadow tale carries within it a seed of truth and a lesson. The myth of the vampires is no different. Beyond the nocturnal terror and the bloodthirst, there's a profound warning against the quest for forbidden knowledge. So the story of the ancient veil teaches us about the perils of the tampering with natural order. Just as the ancient tribes sought to conquer death, in our age, we seek to push the boundaries of mortality and morality. Whether it be through sacrifice, achievements, or acts of transgressions, we have to tread lightly. But it was in Eastern Europe where the modern conception of vampires began to take terrifying shape. The Slavic folklore gifted us the chilling figure of the Nosferatu, a bloated, monstrous corpse rising from the grave to drain the life of the living. And these malignant entities, they were not born, they were created through alleged dark rites, improper burials, unrepentant sinners condemned to walk the earth, allegedly. And as Halloween approaches and the veil between worlds thin, we have to be vigilant, many people believe. So, I want to talk about the Middle Ages, gripped Europe in its cold skeletal fingers. Vampire hysteria reached feverish heights. Historical records recount chilling events, bodies being exhumed, staking, and the driving of nails through skulls to prevent the corpse from rising. Imagine villagers, torches in hand, desecrating graves, compelled by the sheer terror of loved ones returning with the thirst for blood. See, in those dark times, plague-ridden lands believed that the undead were behind the devastations, spreading death like a malignant shadow. The figure of the vampire morphed through the Renaissance, growing more sophisticated, yet no less malevolent. In the 18th century, accounts of vampire infestations in Eastern Europe terrified the Western world. For example, the notorious case of Arnold Poe, a Serbian peasant believed to have become a vampire after his death, led to hysteria, unprecedented. His body was exhumed, and subsequent staking bore witness to the tangible dread that these beings instilled. So let's talk a little bit, because I want to, in the early 18th century, in the secluded village in Serbia, there lived a man named Arnold Poe. And by all accounts, he was an average man, a soldier who had faced the terrors of war, returned home, longing for peace. Unbeknownst to his friends and neighbors, Poe had brought something far sinister back with him, a secret he couldn't escape. See, Poe claimed to have fought against something far more fearsome than any mortal enemy. He spoke of battling the undead in the Turkish land, specifically vampires. Yep, he actually said this. Those dreadful beings who rise from the graves to feast upon the living. Poe had taken all the precautions he thought necessary to protect himself from these abominable creatures, smearing himself with the blood of those who had unalived, even consuming earth from their graves. In 1725, Poe met a tragic end, falling from a great height and passing away from his injuries. But death was not the end of Arnold Poe. Within weeks of his burial, strange occurrences began to plague this small town. People who had known him began to die mysteriously. Their bodies found pale, lifeless, drained of blood. The villagers, obviously gripped by a chill far colder than any winter night, exhumed Poe's body, and to their horror, they found it unchanged. His flesh still supple, his color lifelike. Fresh blood seeped from his mouth, and with trembling hands, the villagers drove a stake through his heart and burned his body. But the nightmare didn't end there. So even after Poe's supposed destruction, the deaths continued. It was as though his cursed touch had spread through the earth, malevolent contagion, and more graves were opened and more bodies were staked and burned. But the incredible fear lingered. See, the story of Arnold Poe is not merely a tale to chill your bones and at night. It's a stark reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. It teaches us that there are forces in this universe that defy our understanding. So Arnold Poe, I think, remember Arnold Poe and this lesson of this cursed existence. But it's a very fascinating story. But the Middle Ages was an interesting time. Remember, especially the plague. Imagine the terror experienced during the Black Plague. Thousands passed away. The cause was unknown. In their desperation to explain the unexplainable, people turned to the supernatural. And we see a lot of reports of graveyards being disturbed, corpses with red faces and blood on their lips. They were rife. Fears of vampirism spread like wildfire. And in this darkness, the vampire legend found fertile ground. They weren't passive entities. They were active threats that needed to be confronted. And the church, by the way, the church, straddling the line between faith and superstition, acknowledged these fears. Now, of course, staking bodies to placing garlic in coffins, elaborate rituals were performed to ensure the dead stayed buried. But the Enlightenment period, that was the rational and the supernatural exploded. The Age of Reason did not completely dispel the fear of vampirism. It took on a new chilling dimension. So the Enlightenment brought with it scientific approach to understanding the world. But the stories of vampirism persisted. Post-mortem examinations revealed natural processes of decomposition, sometimes misinterpreted as signs of life. The writings of Dom Augustin Calmet in the 18th century stand testament to the period's struggle to reconcile superstition with emergent scientific thought. Now, and by the way, the rise of the Gothic fiction, that was huge when it talks of vampirism. This era also marked the birth of Gothic fiction. Authors like Bram Stoker's, immortalized the vampire literature, Dracula. And of course, in modern times, the contemporary culture, the vampire remains a powerful figure. Today, vampires often straddle the line between villain and anti-hero. They embody eternal beauty, tragic romance, yet they're never far from horrific roots. What I don't understand and what cannot be explained is that we see vampire stories in many different cultures at the same time that did not have the ability to communicate with one another. It's not like they had the internet in the 1800s. But what I really find fascinating is when you go deeper into this and you study this, you find that many cultures and many countries that are so spread out talk about the same thing. These creatures that stalk the night, these creatures that drain the blood. And that's what I find so fascinating about this story, because when you compare the two, whether it be in Europe, whether it be in Asia, it doesn't matter. You see stories that are quite similar, deep embedded within the culture. Thank you. That's deep within embedded in the culture, not just an individual belief, but within the culture. Now, with advancements in science, certainly, many traditional fears have been rationalized, but the vampire endures. Perhaps it's because it taps into something fundamental within us. I don't know, a fear that no amount of logic can completely dispel. Always at the heart of the vampire story is the primal terror of being preyed upon, of having one's life force stolen away. Vampires, went right from folklore into literature, immortalizing their menacing allure. The Gothic novel The Vampire by John Polidori introduced the first aristocratic vampire. forebode of the famous Dracula. And then, of course, Bram Stoker's landmark ingrained the image of vampire deep in the culture of psyche. Count Dracula, with his Transylvanian origin, nocturnal existence, hypnotic prowess, became an archetype, an echo of primal fears about disease, sexuality, and even death. It wasn't merely fiction that sustained the vampire's grip on us. Reports and sightings persisted, with many even believing the modern day vampire. Again, as I just talked about, the Highgate Vampire had terrorized London in the 1970s. And these people were terrified. And that illustrates how these phantoms are far from forgotten. Even today, many individuals fervently claim to be vampires, forming subcultures, communities. So the vampires of old may have evolved, but their essence remains intact. Indeed, they are those today who identify as vampires, thank you, asserting to possess a need for human blood, psychic energy to sustain themselves. These modern vampires coalesce in underground communities, living by codes of conduct, engaging in clandestine rituals. You speak to people down south, certainly in New Orleans, and they'll look at you as if you're a three-headed person if you tell them you don't believe in vampires. Now, signs that someone may be a modern-day vampire are subtle yet chilling. Pallor resembling moonlight, an inexplicable aversion to sunlight, unnerving charisma that ensnares those around them. Often such individuals exhibit otherworldly allure. I don't know necessarily if I believe in that, but as we draw a journey through the history of vampires to a close, we have to remind ourselves that these creatures of darkness are more than mere stories. They are embodiments of primal fears, engineered by centuries of human dread and the unknowable mysteries of death. Vampires thrive in the darkest corners of the psyche, and silently shaping our culture. So as you walk outside at night, the shroud of night, heed these words of caution: be vigilant. For the vampires of folklore and fiction have not vanished. They have simply adapted. Many people say they walk among us, cloaked in charm and mystery, waiting for the moment when the veil between their world and ours grows thin. Some things that go bump in the night are very, very real. So stay safe, my friends, because some people absolutely believe that these creatures exist. For me, I have a little bit more of a different perspective on it. But here's what I do know, and here's what I find fascinating. There are many people who have talked about vampires. There are many people who swear that they exist. And no matter what you say to them, no matter what you say, they will absolutely tell you that vampires exist. They will tell you they've seen vampires. Now, before we wrap this up, I want to talk about the type of vampires, and then we'll go into some of your questions and articles that there's a couple articles that I really want to talk about tonight. But listen to this. There's many definitions of type of vampires. There is the, psychotic vampire. That's a person who has a sociopath mental illness that leads them to behave like a vampire, sometimes who actually self-identify as one, and kind of they go into this psychosis mentality, like, for example, the one in Kentucky and what they did to that poor individual. There are beliefs of animal vampires. So the name chupacabra in Spanish literally means goat sucker. And there seems to be no mention of belief of this creature before the mid-1990s. The first reports were from Puerto Rico in 1995. Then soon after came reports of Mexico, Central America, Brazil. And by the end of 1996, there were alleged chupacabra sightings in Spain, Portugal, and the USA, including in Oregon. And by the way, according to the Field Guide to Bigfoot, Yeti, and Other Mystery Primates Worldwide by Lauren Coleman, the chupacabra is about 4 feet tall, covered with short, fine gray fur with spots. Many people believe the chupacabra is a vampire. Now, I talked to an individual in New Orleans before I did this presentation. I said, okay, tell me, what are the stages? If you believe in vampirism, what are the stages of becoming? First, what they refer to it as the awakening. So awakening is a term that describes the physical and mental changes that occur when someone awakens and discovers the other ken. And the awakening typically occurs during or shortly after the onset of puberty, but in some cases can occur much later, around the 30s or even 40s. Then there is the turning. So the method for this turning varies from group to group, but generally involves a rite of blood or energy exchange between the vampire and the person to be turned. So blood vampires most often identify an experience of sharing blood with another person who is already a blood vampire. Now, there are psychic vampires may identify an experience in which they linked or physically bonded with an existing psychic vampire. Then there is what's the term called feeding. So with blood drinking and psychic draining, if you will, that refers to what they actually do. Representatives of both groups have made strong statements to the effect that feeding, whether it be blood or energy, is what makes a human living vampire what it is, and that other identifying traits, like characteristics, are of little or no importance. And feeding appears to be given not an option. You must feed, whether through blood or energy, depending on the type of vampire you are. There is what's called a human living vampire, or otherwise known as HLV. They're individuals who, while they firmly assert that they are essentially human beings, and to all external appearances are exactly that, nevertheless have pronounced vampiric characteristics, having a need or a compulsion, involuntary tendency to feed upon substance or some kind of energy produced. Now, human living vampires fall into two main classes: sanguinarians, who experience blood lust or blood craving, or psychic vampires. Those are psi vampires. Boundaries among categories can be hazy and overlap considerably. And within these two larger categories, there are several subdivisions among self-defined human living vampires. And there's a number of theories proposed by HLV to explain their own origin. So human living vampires are human beings who are born, grow up, age, fully expect to die at the end of a conventional lifespan. No HLV, human life vampire, claims to be immortal, invincible, or possess supernatural abilities. However, many of these groups believe themselves to have some form of sensory amplification of extrasensory perception. Sometimes they claim they have improved night vision, or stinging of the skin when exposed to sunlight, an ability to sense other vampires, perception of auras. Now, those are a bit different than psychic vampires. Psychic vampires are living people who have the ability, consciously or unconsciously, of draining life energy rather than blood from others. And whether that ability was developed through meditation, mental altering substances, it can be used by the psychic vampire to drain energy for its own source. There is a term called sang vampire, S-A-N-G. A sanguine vampire, for sure, sang vampire, drinks blood from willing human donors on a regular basis or a semi-regular basis. So there's several people coined the term sanguinarians for blood vampires whose main vampiric tendency is compulsion or a need to consume blood. There are people in our world today that live as a sang vampire. Now, there's also blood fetish vampire. That makes sense. And then, of course, vampires. So vampire lifestyles are individuals who are attracted to the contemporary vampire lore, seek to emulate it by dressing in exotic vampire-like costumery or decorate their homes in dark Victorian gloom, etc. But we do know that there is some mental issues that could cause the belief of vampirism. And I want to talk about, so porphyria is a rare hereditary blood disease with symptoms that uncannily similar to what we now perceive as classic characteristics of a vampire. And people with this disorder cannot produce an essential component of red blood, and so they crave it. There's also a mental illness called Renfield syndrome. And some psychologists in modern times recognize a disorder. It's called clinical vampirism or Renfield syndrome, in which the victim is obsessed with drinking blood, either from animals or humans. Now, Renfield syndrome is described as having 4 stages: a trauma or a critical incident in childhood in which the patient discovers that the taste and sight of blood is exciting or attractive, the drinking of one's own blood, and which is obviously very dangerous. There have been a number of unalivings performed seemingly vampiric, rituals upon the victims. There was a serial killer, Peter Curtin, and Richard Trenton Chase. They were both called vampires in the tabloids after they were discovered drinking the blood of the people they unalived. There is a related condition. It's also known as self-mutilation syndrome. So sufferers of this, SMS, often known as cutters, feel the need to cut into their flesh and watch themselves bleed. Some sufferers also consume the blood. Most sufferers of the SMS are likely reflecting anger, frustration, inadequacy, emotional pain into their bodies. But no matter how you feel about this, no matter how you may perceive it, it is clear that in many cultures, in many times, by many people, there are stories of vampirism that just will not go away. And so the question is this all myth? Well, if it was, then how can you explain one country in the Middle Ages talking about vampirism, another country far from it talking about the same topic and explaining vampirism in the same manner? I don't necessarily believe in the twilight vampirism, but I do believe that there are people who clearly, well, it's not a matter of belief, we know, state that they are vampires. Now, whether or not they are or not, whether or not they have Renfield syndrome or psychic vampires, whatever it might be, there are people in this world that live their life 24/7 as a vampire. And you have to think that if this wasn't a deeply embedded psychological belief, then they would eventually do something else. Say, okay, I'm kind of growing tired of this. Okay, I'm not a vampire. Now it's time to, find something else. But there are people who live as a vampire 24/7 their entire life. They never grow tired of it. They never, it's like, okay, this is enough. And those are the people that I think are very interesting. Because when you meet people like that, which I have, the dedication, if in fact they are not vampires, the dedication that they have for the belief is quite substantial. So whether or not you believe in vampires or not, that's a question of myth, reality, but we do know, in fact, there are many cultures that do. All right. Do I believe it's demonically? I certainly think it's possible. That people in Kentucky, it was terrible. I encourage you to, if you have not read that, read the story. The vampire group that was from Kentucky that unalived, it was a horrible, horrible case. But he was able to bring these teenagers into his, I don't know what word you want to use, psychosis. And they followed him, and believed firmly that he was this vampire. So Yeah, that's right, Deborah. Okay, listen to this. I want to share this with you guys. And I spoke to someone, like I said, in that was really frightening when I spoke to some people today. Um, oh, not but the other day in um, in New Orleans. And boy, I tell you what, they are absolutely convinced without question that vampires exist. They are 100%. I just kept telling them, well, maybe it's not true. Maybe it's not true. They just looked at me like I was nuts. Okay, I'm going to let me just 1 second. Yeah, I'm just trying to find this because everything is different now, so it's kind of like, well, you kind of got to make do with what you got. And so bear with me while I pull these things up. And then I want to talk a little bit. There we go. Okay. Hold on, guys. It might take a little bit of time. Everything is so different. Here it is. Listen to this story. They did not know, Bell. If you have not heard about this story, this is not science fiction. Scientists just made old monkeys young again. And no one is freaking out about it. It's not sci-fi. It's not a test tube fantasy. It is real. Researchers at the Chinese Academy of Sciences pulled off something wild. They reversed aging in monkeys, not mice, not cells in a lab dish, real living primates. So, how do they do this? By turbocharging their mitochondria. So, mitochondria are the little batteries inside your cells that keep you alive and running. And when you age, they start breaking down. Your energy tanks, your body weakens, and things kind of fall apart. But scientists engineered fresh, high functioning mitochondria and implanted them into aging monkey cells. Their results: energy levels soared. Markers of aging literally reversed. No toxic side effects, improvements passed on to future generations. Now, these monkeys aged backwards at the cellular level and then passed their benefits on to their babies. It's called mitochondrial replacement therapy, otherwise known as MRT. And it's making the anti-aging dream feel very, very real. And that's just one part of the story. So metformin is slowly brain aging in primates. Taurine is reversing muscle and immune decline. And all of this peer-reviewed and published in major journals like Nature and Cell. We're talking about really quality publishing journals. It's not hype. There's not hype. The future clearly is knocking here. The catch: well, these breakthroughs work best if your body is already in good shape, because gene therapy and mitochondrial upgrades won't fix years of neglect overnight. So while billionaires chase immortality in labs, you can start by sleeping better, eating clean, and hitting the gym. But aging might be optional. But being unprepared, well, that's still a choice. No one is talking about that. But here's what's fascinating. A lot of people don't know that Putin, did you hear Putin and President Xi, their conversation? This is an article that I found, and this was all over the world news. But for those of you, okay, I'm going to go to the store and get a mouse. This mouse, I can't. Come on. Sorry, this mouse is really. Okay. The Russian and Chinese leaders had a brief discussion about ways to live forever at their recent meeting. If you ever wondered what sort of things leaders such as Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping actually talk about when they are not discussing politics, a notable conversation between them was picked up on a hot mic. They were walking with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at an event in Beijing last week. And now they say at 70, you're only a child, President Xi told Putin via a translator. Using biotechnology, Putin replied, it will soon be possible to, quote, transplant human organs continuously, grow younger with age, and perhaps even achieve immortality. And President Xi replied, some have predicted that by the end of this century, humans could potentially live up to 150 years. And while the exchange was likely a little more than small talk, some people say, it emphasized the interest both leaders have in remaining in power for as long as possible, even if it involves extending their lifespan. While it is unlikely that either of them will have access to such technology anytime soon, what they said does have some interesting merit. It will likely be possible to live for a lot longer than in the future. Of course, access to such therapies will likely only be reserved for the rich and powerful. And leaders like Putin and Xi would almost certainly be at the top of the list. But it's interesting. It's interesting that China now has a situation where they have made the monkeys age backwards. And President Putin and President Xi were captured on hot mic talking about that. I think that's very interesting. Yet we don't know. But we know something. They clearly have something. They were in China. This was done in China. Now, by the way, for those if you have a couple $1 million and you want to invest in a business, well, I have a business proposition for you. If you're interested, this is by T.K. Randall. The real life conjuring house is to go up for auction this Halloween. The infamous farmhouse and the activity that occurred there inspired the Conjuring movies franchise. For the third time since 2019, the remote Rhode Island farmhouse, which was the scene of a notorious real-life haunting that plagued the Perrin family for years, is about to go up for sale again. The story goes that a witch had cursed the property, dooming anyone who lived there. The house has changed hands several times over the years, with the Hansen family buying it in 2019, and then just 2 years later, a developer taking it over with the intention of opening it to the public. Now it's set to be sold yet again at an auction that will take place October the 31st. Quote, this antique farmhouse has become famous for historical paranormal sightings and activity, the listing states. One interesting element of sales such as this, whether or not the building's haunted reputation will be seen as a good or bad thing by potential buyers. On one hand, anyone interested in the paranormal or in using the house for paranormal events and meetups will certainly find it positive point, whereas anyone who is simply looking for, somewhere to live, doesn't want people coming to look at the house, would probably consider it being a negative. One thing is for sure, whoever does buy it will likely be forking over quite a bit of sum of money. The last time it changed hands, it sold for a whopping $1.5 million. So if you have a couple $1 million and you're interested in buying this house, you might want to check it out. I don't know. I just don't know. I'm sorry, I keep hitting that. I don't know if I would be interested in that. Would you guys interested in buying that? I don't know if I would like that. I don't know. Maybe Mr. Producer can buy it. I think that's a great idea. Mr. Producer, he should buy it, and then we can go live. Jack's Paranormal said, you would? There's a lot of people saying no way. There's no way. All right. Well, there's several people saying yes. Oh, Mr. Producer sent me a message. I think Mr. Producer is going to buy it. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So Mr. Producer says, yeah, he's going to put in a bid. Yeah, he's going to put in a bid. Oh, he's probably freaking out. I don't have 1.5, but $1.5 million. That's a lot of money. But it is cool. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, just the history of it's pretty fascinating. Have you ever heard of the Hat Man? Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's pay for it. Let's get it. We'll get a loan for $1.5 million. What do you want a loan for? To buy a scary haunted house? Well, that sounds like a good plan. Oh yeah, if I had 1.5 million, yeah, it'd be interesting. But listen to this. Have you guys ever heard of the Hat Man? There's a lot of people talk about the Hat Man and what this is and who this is. And have you heard of this creature? Well, this is by T.K. Randall, and he says, what is the truth behind this terrifying shadowy entity? Many people over the years have reported encounters with a shadowy figure in their bedroom at night. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night and peering through the darkness only to catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing at the foot of your bed, watching your every move. Some claim that he appears wearing a trench coat, while others recall it was a wide-brimmed hat, dubbed Hat Man. And this terrifying figure has been doing the rounds on social media for years now, with users sharing stories of their alleged encounters. Similar stories of other types of dark and shadowy figures appear at the foot of the bed in the middle of the night have been told for years. And according to dream analyst and neurobiologist Jane Teresa Anderson, however, there may be a conventional explanation for these encounters. The figure is generally dark and shadowy, with no discernible features. She told a recent article, it may represent a person's deepest, darkest, shadowy figures or fears. Yeah, I agree with that. But here's what I don't understand. There's so many people reporting seeing this thing. So when we sleep, the doctor says, well, our motor muscles are prevented from moving. Yes. It protects us from getting up and acting out our dreams and keeps us safely tucked in bed. But if you start to wake up before your body moves out of atonia, you may experience at an in limbo state, half awake, half dreaming, unable to move, otherwise known as sleep paralysis. Although sleep paralysis only lasts a few seconds, the terrifying experience feels so real that you feel doomed. Now, some believe that the sleep paralysis, which can involve disturbing hallucination and a feeling of presence in the room, can explain the Hat Man, alien abductions, other super phenomena. But what I don't understand is we see so many people reporting this Hat Man from many different cultures, which makes me kind of wonder, is there anything to this Hat Man? I mean, after all, if there's so many people that are reporting it, you have to ask, what is this? So you've seen the Hat Man, Alderson? AJ in the chat saw him? Really? See, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, if you're having sleep paralysis, I get it. I understand sleep paralysis. But the question that I don't understand is why are so many people having this same, even if it's sleep paralysis, then why are so many people having the same thing? That's what I find so fascinating about this particular story. It seems quite odd. Okay. Yeah. Another thing that seems a little odd, we keep playing these games and we're going to find ourselves in some trouble. T.K. Randall wrote this. Scientists have now taken a pivotal step in bringing back the extinct dodo. I just don't understand why I keep... Colossal Biosciences claim that it should be able to bring the species back within the next decade. The iconic flightless bird, which once inhabited the island of Mauritius, is perhaps the best known example of a species hunted to extinction by man, a creature that has since become synonymous with the idea that our activities on this planet can have dire consequences for other species. The first reported encounter with a dodo was Dutch sailors in 1598, and by 1662, the species had been completely wiped out due to hunting and the destruction of its habitat. Now, though, Texas-based de-extinction firm Colossal Biosciences has claimed that it has taken a pivotal step toward bringing the dodo back from the dead. Recently, the firm reported that it had, for the first time, succeeded in growing pigeon primordial germ cells, the precursor cell to sperm and eggs. The dodo was a type of pigeon. So the firm claims also to have developed a gene-edited chickens that will act as surrogates. To create a dodo, the chickens would be injected with primordial germ cells from the dodo's closest living relative, the Nicobar pigeon. Using gene editing, this would eventually make it possible to breed live dodos. According to Chief Executive Ben Lamb, this could be all accomplished in less than 10 years. Says our goal is to make enough dodos with enough genetic diversity engineered into them that we can put them back into the wild where they can truly thrive, he said. So we're not looking to make dodos, we're looking to make thousands. We keep playing around, and that to me is bad news. I agree, because now they're talking about the mammoth. They're talking about so many different, they are convinced now that they can bring back even certain dinosaurs. I mean, Jurassic Park was a movie. Thank you, please. It was a movie. None of us. I never thought that could be possible, but apparently it is. We keep playing around with this. I don't know. Now, by the way, I found out where Mr. Producer comes from. In this next story, TK Randall writes, scientists claims that life on Earth was seeded by extraterrestrials. That explains everything. That explains everything, friends. But it's a true story. Scientists claims that life on Earth was seeded by extraterrestrials. And it says here, what if life didn't simply arise on Earth spontaneously, but was instead put here by an advanced alien race? According to Robert Andres of Imperial College London, the building blocks of life on Earth are so complex that it is highly unlikely that they arose naturally and within such a relatively short time period. Instead, he urges and argues something else would have been needed to kickstart the process, an advanced extraterrestrial civilization that seeded our planet with the building blocks of life by delivering microbial starter kit around 4.2 billion years ago. He says today, humans seriously contemplate terraforming Mars or Venus in scientific journals, he wrote. And if advanced civilization exists, it is not implausible that they might attempt similar interventions out of curiosity, necessity, or design. Now, there are many people that do believe this. It is perhaps more reasonable to assume that if life arose on Earth, though it was through a natural process that can occur repeatedly throughout the cosmos. The aliens did it argument is similar to the creationist God did it argument. It simply regresses the problem back a step and requires an answer to how the creator came to be. Some scientists believe in a slightly different mechanism through which the building blocks of life arrived on Earth. meteorites, comets seeding the planet through the natural processes. Whether we'll ever be able to find out for sure remains unclear. But there are people who are 100% convinced that either one, that an alien species created us, and I know some people believe it was the Anunnaki, and two, or that we live in a simulator, if you will. That this is all a simulation. That just like if you play The Sims, you play The Sims on your computers, you tell the person what to do, where to go, go to the restroom or go to work or whatever, go eat. Well, there are many people believe that we live in a simulation, that there is an intelligent species that is above ours that's basically using us as like The Sims, the game. It's a great game. I don't know if it's a great story, though. Right, yeah, I'm not a big fan of, well, I don't know about this. But, we're going to wrap up soon with this. Listen to this story. This is really a fascinating story. I wanted to share this with you guys. Randall writes this: nuns on the run. 3 sisters flee from care home to remote convent. There are 3 nuns have given the church authorities a runaround in Austria by fleeing their care home. In what sounds like it could be a plot of a whimsical family movie, 3 elderly nuns who had been forced into a care home against their will have taken a stand against church authorities by fleeing back to an abandoned convent in the Alps. Sister Bernadette, 88, Sister Regina, 86, and Sister Rita, 82, managed to regain entry to the Cloister Goldstein Convent near Salzburg with the help of former students and a locksmith. According to reports, the nuns had been removed from the convent in 2023 against their will and taken to the care home, where it was expected they would remain for the rest of their lives. In a daring move, however, the defiant trio managed to escape and return to their former abode. They are now the only 3 nuns living at the convent. Sister Rita says, "I am so pleased to be home. I was always homesick at the care home. I'm so happy and thankful to be back." The nuns had spent most of their entire lives at the convent, which has also served as a private school for girls since 1877. And one of the 3 even went to school there herself when she was a child. Not surprisingly, officials are not too happy with the nuns. According to Provost Marcus Grassel, the building is no longer able to sustain independent living, especially for 3 nuns in their 80s with various health needs. He described their decision to return there as incomprehensible. Yeah, because he's not the one who's forced to go to a nursing home. Maybe if he was forced to go to a nursing home, maybe then he would actually understand. I understand. I completely understand. Good for them. Yeah, it's sad. I mean, it's like, really, you're gonna. Good for them. I think that's great. They don't want to spend the rest of their lives in the nursing home. They want to go back to where they're comfortable. They're home. Yeah, Lori, I tell you what, there are a lot of people. Okay, I want to talk really, really quickly about a couple of museums that I went to that I strongly encourage you not to visit. So if you go to California, I am encouraging you not to go to the Museum of Death. So I was doing a presentation before I went to Los Angeles, and someone said, "Oh, you got to go. It's really interesting." I was under the impression that the Museum of Death was probably an historical museum, of showing of Gacy and Dahmer, and it did have that. To be fair, it actually had a pair of Gacy's shoes, clown shoes. Had and the Heaven's Gate. It had the actual bed bunks, 2 bed bunks from the Heaven's Gate, and the clothing that they wore. The clothes, the shoes, it had everything. They didn't allow you to take any pictures. They had a lot of letters that the owner received from Dahmer and Gacy and others. Those were interesting to see, but I got to tell you, I was very troubled by the rest of, thank you, by the rest of the museum. It was, yeah, it was like, okay, this is too much. I don't need to see this. So there were a lot of pictures that, the police officers during the scenes, a lot of unalivings and police, photographs of that. And it was like, okay, I don't need to see this. I don't need to see this. It was pretty barbaric. It was pretty barbaric. So past morbid, because it did talk about a lot of unalivings. And then when you see the pictures, that the police took on the scene, it was, it made you think, my God, there are some really sick people out in this world. And we all know that. But when you see the pictures, yeah, it's a different world. It's a different, like I said, there are some things that I would suggest not seeing. So the Museum of Death is one that I would encourage you not to go to. Not because I have a very strong stomach, but I just found it so grotesque. And I guess that's the whole point. But the coroner, I mean, there's a lot of pictures from the coroner's office. It was barbaric. Now, I also went to go see a Museum of Medieval Torture that someone said I should see. Now, because I love history. Now, I did really enjoy learning about the history and seeing some of the devices that was used. The problem is, I was going to do a documentary on it, but I can't. There's no way, because they had like dummies that was reenacting those torture scenes, and I know social media would ding me on them. I know that for a fact. So I don't know if I could even do that. Because taking some of the pictures, where the scene was just really grotesque, and I'm absolutely convinced that I would probably be banned. I couldn't put them on TikTok. I know. I don't think I could put them on Tube to the U, because I think I would be banned there too. So because it was just so, it wasn't as bad as, well, obviously they're dummies, but the Museum of Death, there's no way. Number one, they wouldn't allow you to take pictures, and number two, I just don't think that's something worthwhile. I wish that they had just did a museum of the history, even Dahmer or Gacy or Manson. They had several of their items, but there was so many grotesque pictures of the coroner's office. It just wasn't, I saw no value in it. None whatsoever. The only thing that I walked away thinking is, and I used to be a chaplain for a major metropolitan police department, and I saw people unalivings, but this took it to a different level. It took it to a different. So someone, I don't know who it was on TikTok, says you should go see the Museum of Death. I don't think that was the best solution or suggestion. I would encourage you to stay away from it. I did see Madame Tussauds. That was interesting. Madame Tussauds was pretty cool. There were some that were like, that didn't look so great, and there were others that looked fantastic. So, but I enjoyed that. Okay, but we're going to wrap things up. Hold on, TikTok will be with you guys in a moment. For everybody else, we will be here Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Bible study. All right, so we'll do Bible study here. Remember, your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. You are priceless, and don't let anybody tell you or convince you otherwise. Good night.